2, 3,
rev up your engine! It's time for Scotty Gilbert Channel. Okay, it's happened to all of us. You're driving on the road, and all of a sudden you smell a burning, smoldering smell coming from under the hood. Now, of course, it could be lots of things, but most of the time it's oil leaking and then getting on the exhaust and then making a little burning smell. Now, in this case, we'll take off the stupid beauty cover and we'll look at the valve cover gasket and we'll see there's oil leaking all the way under it. And when we go under the car, we can see oil has dripped the whole way down. Started at the top, dripped all the way down. So it's time for new valve cover gaskets. And as you can see here, the oil's gotten on the exhaust pipe, and of course this gets really hot when the car's running, and that's where most of the smell will be coming from. Now, in the case of this V6 Lexus, the front valve cover is pretty easy to get to, but behind the front valve cover gasket is the back cover gasket inside here. We got to take the whole intake of the car off in order to get to it and change that back gasket. Now, the gasket kit doesn't cost that much, but there's a lot of labor involved, so let's get going. First, we'll stick a drain pan under to catch anything that drips. Then we'll grab this radiator clamp and take the hose out of the way. Then we'll get this old dish pan, stick it here so we can put all the nuts and bolts in and they won't get lost. Then we'll take out the ignition coils. You just pop right off. You gotta wiggle them a little. And then remove all the bolts that hold the valve cover in place. Now here's a trick I learned years ago. Get a pry bar, put it on the metal, on the head, and then under the valve cover here and pry it a little. And you can see the whole thing starts coming up. They stick on pretty tough. And here it is. Too bad the back side's going to be a lot harder than this easy front side. Now, this Lexus gasket is great. It's got little ribs in it, so when you put it in place, it actually snaps and holds itself in. So when you put it back together, you don't need to put any glue on it because it'll stay on since the ridges hold it in a little groove. Then the cover just goes back on, give it a little push, and then tighten the valve cover gasket bolts up, make them snug from the middle, and work your way out until you got the outside ones tightened. And then once you made them all snug, go back and make sure they're good and tight. Now, these valve cover bolts pretty much have stops on them, so once they hit the metal, you can't turn them anymore. You just give them a little bit of a pull just to make sure it's as tight as they go and leave it at that. Then we put all the coils back on. And now comes the hard part. We got to take the intake manifold and all that crap off to get to the back valve cover gasket. First, we'll take the air box off, unbolt all this and pull it out of the way. It'll come apart in pieces. We'll take this off, then we'll get the air box out of the way. Then we'll take the throttle off. You just remove the 4 bolts and take that out of the way. And on the back side here, you'll see this little bolt. That holds it to the engine. You got to take that little bolt off too. You'll never get the top off. There's another one on the other side we got to get off. Now, as long as you're dealing with hard to get to bolts, the one on the back side here is a 14 millimeter. That's almost impossible to get to. So I've got one of these swivel head sockets that'll help take it off. It's invisible to see inside here, so you basically, you feel with your fingers, get the wrench on and start pulling. And then with enough cursing and swearing and cutting your hands, out it comes. The first time I ever did one of these, I had one hell of a time trying to figure out where that stuff was. But with that special wrench, I got it off, and it's not that bad. You really need to get a wrench like that, though. Then while I'm in there, you'll see there's a PCV hose. We have to pull that out of the way, because that's connected to the intake too. Then we take off the wiring assembly that's in the way of the bolts. Then take the bolts that hold the intake manifold on. Then we pull the intake manifold out of the way. And we can finally access the bolts to take the cover off just like the front. You pry it off just like the other one. Then we got that off and we put the new gasket on the other side. And if you notice, this one is blue because it's a special silicone gasket. Since that one's so hard to get to, the replacement one is a higher quality, so it won't leak as fast. Then of course, we bolt it all back on like the other side. But I'm not going to film all that because I already showed the front one. It would be too boring, and it's getting ready for a spring storm here, so I got to get this done before I get rained on. And filming slows me down. So the next time your valve covers start leaking and you get a smoldering smell inside your car, now you know how to fix it. And remember, if you've got any car questions, just visit the Scotty Kilmer channel. And I'll answer them as soon as this kookaburra is done laughing.